No spin, no bias, no censorship. I'm Dan Wootton. This is Outspoken. We're live with episode number 217. And across much of England, apart from the areas where there was an anti-democratic halt to elections, it is voting day. And while I understand why your faith in the system has been shattered over the past few years, you could say the past few decades, for the moment at least, our hope remains at the ballot box. Indeed, Nigel Farage has today declared the end of the Uniparty in Britain forever. Can we dare to dream?
Tomorrow is the day that two-party politics that has dominated this country since the end of the Great War, tomorrow is the day that two-party politics in England dies for good.
And that is the reason why Katie Hopkins delivered this message to Outspoken viewers: hold your nose and vote for reform.
Hold your nose.
Yeah.
Know that all these things we just discussed are true, and at the same time, vote.
Then next week, the real fight for the right begins. So we're going to analyse it all on what is a big day for democracy with my superstar panel. They are back, Based and Bougie and Sophie Corcoran. Also coming up on the show today, is the UK ready for a sensible and considered debate on why Enoch Powell was right? Douglas Murray certainly thinks so, and we're going to show you why. Victory for pedestrians and drivers as cycling extremist Jeremy Vine quits posting his two wheeled vehicles online. We're going to analyse what was a Partridge-like announcement. And J.K. Rowling will be regretting going woke as her race swap Snape in the new Harry Potter TV series joins a campaign against her for believing in women. Then, in the uncancelled after show on Substack, big royal news today: Prince William has finally snapped. I'll reveal his bombshell vow to punish Meghan Markle for using her HRH title with royal YouTube sensation P. Diner. You can sign up to watch right now, www.outspoken.live. Register completely for free to join the Outspoken revolution. And by the way, you want to be here tomorrow. We're going to have the best coverage of the election results you will not get in the mainstream media, with a fabulous superstar panel: Father Calvin Robinson, Alex Phillips, Connor Tomlinson, Howard Cox. They are all here. So it's the election results show without the MSM bull. Okay, we're also going to do Greatest Britain Union Jackass as ever today, though. You choose the nominees and the winners, and you can vote right now for Union Jackass in the YouTube live chat. Here are your nominations today. Ross Kemp, nominated by Karen Hankey for his cringe video with Slippery Starmer campaigning for the local elections and advising the PM on what working class people think. He's no Ant Middleton, Karen says, and I agree. Anna Sawar, the Labour Party leader in Scotland, nominated by Darren Donaldson for blatant sectarianism and being anti-white. That is, of course, in a speech where he urged Pakistanis to take power. And Max Wilkinson, the Liberal Democrat MP, also nominated by Karen for his awful heckling of Nigel Farage in Parliament yesterday. Maybe you can pay for it then, you stupid bleep. So there are your three options. And of course, after we choose today's Union Jackass, all four from across the week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, will go head to head to be named the worst Britain in the world this week. So get voting, and I will bring you those results at the end of the show. But now, let's go. Can we finally dare to dream? Is the Uniparty really about to be smashed against all odds, given our first past the post system, which is designed to protect the establishment, keep the deep state in force? And should we even maintain any damn faith in our system? In the ballot box, given our hopes and our desires have been ignored by whichever side of the Uniparty is in power for 60 years now. 60 years, especially on immigration. And the country is not recognisable, and we are not safe as a result. Well, Nigel Farage believes now is the moment, and the vehicle is his ego-driven company Reform UK, which he claims is not on the right nor the left.
Tomorrow is the day that two-party politics that has dominated this country since the end of the Great War, tomorrow is the day that two-party politics in England dies for good.
But you know, I cover both sides of this debate here. I am an independent journalist. I'm not a shill for any party. I just want what's best for the country. So Nigel's arch-rival and the new flag bearer for the real right, Rupert Lowe, has a different view. The former Reform UK MP has written on X, "This election is about your local community, not grandstanding, not slogans, not empty noise, not ego, not protest. Vote for someone who has presented a credible, practical path for your area. Not meaningless rhetoric, not vague promises, real policies, clear and precise ideas with costed solutions. If someone boldly states that they alone can fix your council, ask one question. How? It's your community, your home. Having seen the staggering lack of policy presented, I wondered how much value national parties actually provide at this level. The more local politics and local politicians are detached from the political scene, the better, I say. Voting one way or another won't stop the boats or cut immigration, nor will it eject Labour from power. My advice, focus carefully on the candidate who understands the real issues that matter to your community and actually has a credible plan to do something about them." However, Rupert's position prompted a messy social media row, part of the civil war on the right. This time between Rupert and the Farage ally Lois Perry, who claimed Rupert is now working for the Tories. So this is what she wrote on X. "Quite clear who Rupert Lowe really works for. They really think we're stupid, don't they? Our only hope is Nigel Farage." Rupert replied, "If you're insinuating that I'm being paid by the Conservative Party, that is a bold claim to publicly make." Certainly today is Farage's moment, though, and he knows it.
If you vote reform, you will get reform. There's no more splitting of the vote. Forty percent of the dwindling number that still voted Conservative at the last election didn't vote for us because they didn't think we could win. They thought we'd split the vote. After tomorrow, when we're bigger than the Conservative Party and the world can see it, it'll be them that splits our vote. Vote reform, get reform. That is the message tomorrow, out on the doorsteps, in the streets, in the pub gardens, and I believe that'll be the message for the next 4 years in the run-up to the next general election. British politics is about to change in a way that nobody understands and nobody can see, but I feel it deep within my heart, and I sense that you feel it deep within your heart too. Let's make history and change our country forever and for good.
And of course, most attention is on Runcorn and Halsby. And if you were in Runcorn and Halsby, why the hell would you vote for this woman, Karen Shaw, to replace a man who was disgraced for physically assaulting one of his constituents?
Over the weekend, we saw that the government had announced the closing down of the asylum hotel locally. Do you think there's a recognition that Reform are snapping at your heels in the local area?
I think, and I've said this before, that closing down the asylum hotels was something that was in the manifesto last year at the general election. It's just not something that is much talked about. And that, for me, is not coming from a place of prejudice or discrimination, quite the opposite. It's coming from a place of human decency, that they are not nice places to put asylum seekers to live because they can't cook, they can't clean, they're on top of each other in their living, etc. It's just not a nice place to be held. And the fact that they're held for so long because the processing has been so slow
Why would you vote for her? Seriously, you would have to be mad. In his final rally of the election campaign, Nigel admitted his new great replacement theory applies to taking over the Conservative Party.
Theory they're opposed by a Conservative Party that is split down the middle, and frankly, I couldn't tell you what purpose it serves. Tomorrow is the day when we replace a party that's been around since 1832, but is now past its sell-by date. Tomorrow is the day we replace the Conservatives as the main opposition to a poor, weak, hopeless, failing government. Tomorrow is a big day in our nation's democratic history and future.
And he hammered that point during his last campaign interview with his employer, GB News.
Arrangements with Conservatives in councils be a model for maybe cooperation post-general election?
Absolutely not.
Coalition with the Tories? Or
the Tories won't exist at the time of the next election.
Okay.
I mean, what you're going to see from the 2021 vote is a lot of old Conservative voters come to us, and a chunk go to the Lib Dems as well. I honestly, I know they've been here since 1832. I don't believe there'll be an electoral force at the next election.
And while he's right that our disillusionment with the Tory party after 14 years of failure remains extreme, I mean, it's hard to see how we could ever tick that box again, right? The fight for the right in the United Kingdom, it's not over. Indeed, on Monday, it will begin again in earnest, because is there any point of Reform UK if that party, the Teals, is simply going to be a centrist repeat of the Conservatives? But for the moment, Katie Hopkins has declared it's a case of hold your nose and vote for Reform UK.
But I think we have to be very clear, and I made a little, this was straight off the top of my head, 10 seconds worth. I don't like Nigel because he screwed UKIP, vote Reform. I don't like Nigel because he's a snake. It's true. I don't like Nigel because he sold out the Brexit party. He did. Candidates didn't even know they were going to be screwed at the same time they were being screwed. I don't like Nigel because he treated Rupert Lowe horribly. He absolutely did, briefing the newspapers that Rupert had dementia. I don't like him because he's a maniac. He is. I've met him in person, and he has terrible teeth. He will not acknowledge Tommy Robinson. He will not. That's despicable. Tommy's being tortured. He flip-flops. He has Mohammed Youssef as his banker. Yes, he does. That should never have happened. It goes on. This was off the top of my head. All the reasons that people will say, I can't vote Reform. And I agree with every single one of them. But this is not a church. This is a casino. Voting is entering the casino, and you have to game the house. You have to game the system, right? Well done, production team. Yes, that's a photo of Tommy. At this point, we have to game together, right? And the way we game this best is by doing what you've been advising, I believe, which is hold your nose.
Yeah.
Know that all these things we just discussed are true, and at the same time, vote Reform.
Yeah. Now, let me bring in today's elections superstar panel. And I am delighted to have the Conservative commentator Sophie Corcoran and the Conservative YouTube sensation Based and Bougie back with me today. Sophie, this is an interesting one for you because, of course, you were a proud Conservative, maybe not so proud in recent years, but you remained a member of the Conservative Party up until the general election, defected to Reform UK, then were a little bit disillusioned, I think it's fair to say, given all of that terrible sort of lawfare around Rupert Lowe and the reporting to the police and all of that. So where do you stand this election day?
I think this is the first ever election that I haven't campaigned in. And I've campaigned in every election since I was 14 years old. And when I say campaign, I mean quite literally from 6 a.m. till 10 a.m. I'm a little bit jealous of your panel tomorrow because it is no secret that I'm a massive election nerd. But I think this is going to be the most interesting local election that I think I've ever seen. There's lots of results that I can't call. But I think what's so interesting about this is a lot of people are framing this as Reform's night. This is going to be a big win for Reform. In many senses, I hope it is. I, of course, hope that they win in Cambridgeshire, definitely. But the big challenge is that winning elections obviously doesn't mean it's necessarily over. And this is potentially going to be one of Reform's greatest victories. I mean, it's important to keep in mind, actually, that there's been a lot of hype in the media. We've had, hundreds of by-elections since the general election, and Reform have won a few, but they haven't necessarily won as many as perhaps the media are talking them up about. The Conservatives have actually quietly been winning quite a lot of them. And obviously Labour are getting hammered, which is no surprise. But one of the things I think is important to keep in mind is that there is a potential tonight for Reform to win certain councils. Yes. I think for our viewers, you want to potentially keep your eye on Doncaster, is one that I know Reform HQ expect themselves to win. They expected to win in Thurrock, but that election was cancelled as well. There is an expectation that they'll take County Durham tonight, which of course is, I believe, where Darren Grimes is standing. So good luck to him.
Come on, Darren.
And there is many other, there's other ones. Obviously, Cambridge is going to be tight, but I don't necessarily think they'll do great there, just because it's quite a Lib Demi place. Lincolnshire, again, is going to be another one. So this is the first time, actually, that we're going to see Reform in a position of power. They've had their entire party of being a party of opposition. Do they have what it takes to lead? Because for what I'm seeing quite now is, yes, they may win these councils, but who's going to lead those councils? Who's going to be on their cabinet positions? What are their policies going to be like? Are they going to sink or are they going to swim in leadership? And I tell you something, if they sink, it is bad news for Reform, because they're dead before they've even started at the next election. It's going to be a big challenge for them, because we haven't necessarily thought about Reform. We've thought about them doing well. We haven't actually ever really thought about them in a frame of leading a council. Can they lead a council? They don't navigate their local election policies on local issues. We've seen all of their campaigns and national campaigns. So if they do win these councils, what are they going to do with it?
Well, indeed.
How well are they going
and
to
what's
do?
interesting too is you've got totally different types of experience. I mean, I fully back Dame Andrea Jenkins in Lincolnshire. I think she would be will hopefully be an absolutely brilliant mayor, and she has the experience to take on that role. Luke Campbell, who seems like a really great guy, is obviously an Olympic boxer who has no experience in politics. So it is going to be very, very interesting. Based in Bougie, are you in the Katie Hopkins camp or the Rupert Lowe camp?
I am a Rupert Lowe stan. I'm definitely a Rupert Lowe stan. This is the thing, when it comes to Nigel Farage, I really like him as a character. I think he's a very charismatic man. He's very entertaining at times. And he seems like he has a great personality. But has anyone ever noticed that Nigel Farage has never really given us a plan? Like, he's never given us a detailed plan about how he plans to reform this country. I mean, we keep getting these Martin Luther King, I have a dream, reform is coming in my heart, I believe change is coming, and you should vote for reform if you want to see reform. But in terms of a detailed plan, I'm yet to receive one. For instance, I sat down with Nick Tenconi a couple months ago, and he gave me a detailed plan about how he plans to, mass deport. He even went into detail about where he plans to find these people, in barber shops, in corner shops. He even talked about how he plans to give rewards to people who can find illegal immigrants. Nigel Farage, on the other hand, he decided to, go against Rupert Lowe, because Rupert Lowe said that he has plans to mass deport. And then he decided to say that the term mass deportation is a very grave and dark and dangerous language. But wasn't that his brand for the last 5 years? Mass deportation, mass migration is a problem. And now he's saying we need to prioritize the Muslim vote. Mass migration is a grave word. I'm not the populist. We don't have a real plan. So as much as I appreciate Nigel Farage for his character, and as much as I appreciate how he's been able to unite UK patriots the way we've never seen before, I really want people to ask themselves, what is Nigel Farage's plan? Because we have yet to receive one. It's like going into a surgery room and the surgeon is telling you, I'm going to give you the best surgery, but he's not telling you what the surgery actually is. And like Rupert Lowe said in that tweet, the same way your body is your home, your country is also your home. So before you vote, I just encourage people to just think to yourself, what is the actual plan that Nigel Farage is, planning to give the UK to reform this country?
Another really interesting thing that involves Rupert Lowe is this suggestion, and it is now growing, the drumbeat is growing, that Nigel Farage and Donald Trump have had some sort of falling out. a lot of people think this is as a result of Elon Musk coming out quite publicly and saying that Farage doesn't have what it takes to be prime minister. That's when he endorsed Rupert Lowe and all hell broke loose. Christopher Hope, the political editor of GB News, did ask Nigel Farage about this in his final campaign interview last night. And I think the answer from Farage was very telling, because it's clear that he now feels deeply uncomfortable speaking about Donald Trump. Something has happened behind the scenes. Watch this.
Donald Trump, have you sent him a congratulatory note about his 100 days?
No, I haven't.
You haven't been in touch at all since he...
I said before, you've got a British government involved in trade negotiations. If I'm seen to be interfering from the sidelines, that would look terrible.
I sense, are you disengaging from Trump a bit? Is it that you've seen the support, the popularity of Mark Carney when he defined himself against Trump? And of course, he's a bête noire for you in terms of politics. Is there ground to be gained now for reform and for you for disengaging with where Trump is?
Quite why Trump's come out with his 51st State of America stuff with Canada, I have no idea. I've always said that our interests with Trump are similar but not symmetrical. And I still believe this is a pro-British American president who wants to do a full trade deal with us, but I worry that Starmer's reset with the EU is going to make that impossible.
That's coming up next month. So are you disengaging from Trump?
No, I'm not disengaging. I'm not disengaging, but I cannot be seen to interfere. If the Labour Party ring me up and say, go and see him and try and help with the trade deal, I go and do it. But if I interfere now, I'll be called all the names under the sun.
Sorry, I just don't buy it. I don't buy it. Something is going on between Trump and Farage, and Katie Hopkins broke news on this earlier in the week on Outspoken. Let's watch.
Elon is very clear that Tommy Robinson is being persecuted, is a political prisoner, should be freed, and has made that very clear within the Trump top team. I've heard it said from very close allies to President Trump. And as a result, he was able to let Trump know that Farage isn't the guy that Farage had been selling in to Trump. Was very, very embarrassing for Nigel Farage to be called out like that by Elon. It was very embarrassing for the mask to slip. And from that moment onwards, Farage wanted revenge. I mean, this is Roman level stuff. This is the Caesars stabbing each other.
Wow. So based in Bougie, you were obviously a big Tommy Robinson supporter. Quite extraordinary that the fact that Farage would not get behind Tommy Robinson may have caused some type of fracture in this friendship, which has gone on for many years now, ever since Brexit, between Donald Trump and Nigel Farage.
Well, if Donald Trump has distanced himself from Nigel Farage, that is a good thing in my opinion, because at the end of the day, Donald Trump, he is somebody that stands for Western values being democracy, freedom of speech. And what has happened to Tommy Robinson is literally a symbol of just how much our Western values has broken down here in the UK. So if Donald Trump was to now go and back Nigel Farage and back his the Reform Party, that will completely go against his morals and his values. So, and not only that, Elon Musk has had a huge influence in Donald Trump and his just Donald Trump in general. So I wouldn't be surprised, and if he has decided to distance himself from Nigel, that would be a good thing. And this is why I absolutely love Donald Trump, because he stands on business. He does not play around. When he means something, he says it. If he says something, he means it. And I believe it would be a good thing. And I think this would also be an opportunity for Nigel Farage to just look in the mirror, honestly.
And he never turned on the January 6th political prisoners, for example. So there are a lot of parallels there between the treatment of Tommy Robinson. Sophie Corcoran, we have obviously known Nigel Farage, followed Nigel Farage for a very long time. Don't you agree with me that there was something in his body language there with Christopher Hope? Something has happened behind the scenes between Trump and Farage, hasn't it?
Yeah, he did look quite noticeably uncomfortable when he was asked that question. And he's a very clever man. He's obviously not going to want to say, yes, me and Trump have had a falling out. I guess, there is a perspective of that. He has, in some respects, some may argue that he's traded off his relationship with Trump quite a lot in his political career, especially in the last decade or so. It has definitely pushed his career forward to no end. But again, if you look at what happened in Canada, a good relationship with Trump isn't always a guarantee for an electoral success. And I think that potentially could also be the case in Britain. I think maybe Farage is also a little bit wary of that, because obviously Pierre was polling extremely well and he ended up losing his own seat because of Trump coming in and kind of messing with that. So, you know, Farage, like we said, is trying to almost replace the Conservative Party. He would present himself in a very similar way to Pierre, how Pierre would have done, and obviously that necessarily didn't work too well for him, did it? Because of the Trump administration coming in. So perhaps Farage is aware of that, but you know, I guess I reckon there is something that's gone behind the scenes.
It's absolutely fascinating, absolutely fascinating. The one thing I would say about Donald Trump, though, he's known to change his mind as well. I mean, look at his ups and downs with Piers Morgan. Piers Morgan's literally like, you're the worst president ever. Now he's calling him up to take advice. So even though Nigel Farage may be thrust out of the inner circle at the moment, the inner sanctum, because Elon Musk is very much there, it doesn't mean that it is forever. Breaking right now, Douglas Murray has spoken publicly on Enoch Powell in a fascinating new interview, raising the prospect that it is time for an intelligent, an informed, and a hysteria-free conversation about why the Conservative politician was right back in 1968 when he delivered his infamous Rivers of Blood speech. Now, that's something that no one in the mainstream media has even been prepared to countenance over the past, well, half a century now. But I urge you all to go and read the words of Enoch Powell. And while I agree with Margaret Thatcher that some of his language was unfortunate, the point he was making about the damage that mass immigration would cause to the United Kingdom has come true. Before we get into it with our superstar panel based and Bougie and Sophie Corcoran, I want you to watch this fascinating discussion with Stephen Edgington, who I have to say really remains the best of GB News. Not many people there these days who I respect, but he is very, very good. And this interview with Douglas Murray on Enoch Powell is fascinating.
And one of those post-war titans, you know, I'm not being ironic here, I genuinely think this, was Enoch Powell, incredibly influential, incredibly intellectual politician. You know, you can say what you like about his views on immigration, but I think he's an incredibly impressive person. Do you think that he was a kind of prophet when it comes to the issues that Britain is facing today? And maybe you can comment on his legacy.
Well, he was a remarkable man, and even people who were detractors of his and opponents of his, like Diane Abbott, had the courtesy to acknowledge that he was among the great orators of his era. I actually met him a few times as a boy. He was a mesmerizing, compelling figure, and there's something very interesting about him. I mean, he didn't get everything right, and you might say, well, who does? And there are certain parts of his famous 68 speech which are lurid and definitely didn't help his argument in certain ways. But that aside, on a range of issues, he just got a lot more right than he got wrong. And I think that one of the, even just saying that, I can feel you clipping that to be, you know, Enoch was more right than he was wrong or whatever, which then always creates a world of pain for anyone who says it. But then let me just add to that. The point is that if somebody is onto nothing, then before they're dead, let alone afterwards, their name is forgotten. If somebody has a theory or a claim that is simply not true, it dies with them. But there is a reason why, all these decades later, somebody of your age, I can't remember how old you are now.
25.
25, would know the name Enoch Powell. And I imagine that from one week to the next, you very rarely think about Reginald Maudling. Yeah, I thought so. I don't either, by the way. I do not think of Barbara Castle. We do not discuss Ted Heath's thoughts.
Roy Jenkins.
Roy Jenkins, even. Shirley Williams is not on the tip of everyone's tongues in 2025, but Enoch Powell lingers. And there's obviously a reason for that.
Well, based on Bougie, number one, fascinating discussion. And I think I really agree with what Douglas Murray was saying there. What's fascinating is if you go back to the speech and you look at it today, Enoch Powell was expressing concern that at the time there was an admission rate of 5,000 a year by voucher, with a further 25,000 dependents coming in per annum ad infinitum. Now, last year, based in Bougie, was 1.2 million. So when Enoch Powell predicted that by the end of the century, which was the year 2000, the United Kingdom was going to be forever changed, he was right. Obviously, what he didn't know necessarily about was how Islam would shape so much of, I guess, the troubles that we're now facing. But he did right. And these are his exact words. Now we are seeing the growth of positive forces acting against integration, of vested interests in the preservation and sharpening of racial and religious differences, with a view to the exercise of actual domination, first over fellow immigrants and then over the rest of the population. Now, based on Bougie, can you deny that is what has happened?
No, it absolutely is what has happened. I feel like the man said, he prophesized it. And I loved how Douglas Murray actually told the guy, you're a 25-year-old who knows Enoch Powell. I'm 25 too, and I do know of this man, and I don't know anyone else around that period. But what he said was very important, and it was a prophecy. Here's my thing, and I'm just going to break it down in simple terms for people to understand. When you go to Brazil, you want to see Brazilian culture. When you go to Nigeria, you want to see Nigerian culture. Now, here in Great Britain, I just do not understand, not even just Great Britain, but Europe in general. I don't understand why Europe is the only nation, and Great Britain, that is forced to just be this mixing pot and this multiculturalism, diversity rainbow. Now, you guys are probably wondering, why are you saying this as a Black woman? I'm saying this because I believe Western values are very important. The West is the best. Freedom of speech, democracy. I mean, these are things that my parents came to this country for.
Yes.
And now that is completely disappearing because
and you
of our
don't see it in Japan, do you? You don't see it in
UAE.
Saudi Arabia. Yeah,
Exactly. But here in the UK, and I just don't understand, like, whether you're white or not, like, why doesn't that raise an eyebrow for everybody? That why is this country being forced to house half of the planet and being forced to just completely change its national identity? I'm not sure if you guys seen the viral video of the guy who was waving the England flag, sorry, I think it was on an ITV interview. And you had this, I don't even want to call her name, but she started to get really offensive.
Kerr versus Tom Skinner, I think it was.
That is so rude. I'm just like, hold on. We're always talking about diversity. We're always talking about equality. That has been the term for the last decade. But when it comes to English people, and this is their line, I am going to say this as a Black person, this is their line, and I am just a host here. I find it so confusing, and I find it so mind-boggling how people are forcing this cultural change of Great Britain. And for me personally, I do not like it, because I definitely believe Great Britain has paved the way for Western values in a way that no other Western country has. And the fact that people are trying to destroy it is really, it works my nerves every day. And again, going back to the first, second generation immigrants, they came here for these Western values. For example, the Windrush generation. Yes, they came here for jobs, but they came here because they knew Western values was something that we have to protect. But now that's completely being eroded, and it's unfortunate that, you know, what Enoch Powell predicted is actually coming to fruition.
Indeed. And Sophie Corcoran, I think the thing that makes me so angry is that, because I went back and just, I wanted to, having heard Douglas Murray, I wanted to just make sure that what I thought was indeed correct. And if you look at the opinion polling from 1968, despite the fact that the media, we would now call it the MSM, were saying Enoch Powell is the worst man in the world. You know, they forced him to be sacked, essentially, which was something that Margaret Thatcher disagreed with, by the way. She wasn't leader at the time. 75% of the country, Sophie, backed his speech. And we have been ignored on immigration for 60 years, which is why I think we're now so angry today and why we want the Uniparty to be smashed today.
Well, yeah, quite. This has been, you know, the public as a whole and Britain as a whole have been really anti-immigration for a really long time. I mean, for my entire life, and I've been involved in politics since I was really young. I'm talking probably about 10 years old. Every election,
you're a wonder child.
And stopping immigration has been, you know, the number one issue. But
yes.
Nothing has happened, and I just think, how on earth can we keep promising this and nothing is happening when there is a clear agreement with the public that this is what we want to have, and this is how countries are supposed to be governed. You're supposed to be governed on the basis of what your people want, and we want this. So
indeed.
why not?
Well, and again, let me just quote from the speech, because the thing that was so unfortunate about the speech is that the Rivers of Blood line was obviously not his. It was quoted. He was quoting, and that was obviously what the newspapers ran with at the time, and the newspapers dominated the national conversation at the time. But he said that if it is like watching a nation busily engaged in heaping up its own funeral. And, you know, look at where we're at today. It is interesting too, based in Bougie, to note that Nigel Farage actually asked Enoch Powell to endorse him at a by-election for UKIP. This was in the 1990s. I think he died in 98, Enoch Powell. And I think one thing that's so sad is I bet if you asked Nigel Farage about Enoch Powell today, based in Bougie, he'd run a million miles. And doesn't that show you where his politics have changed too? Because actually he was brave back in the 90s saying, no, Enoch Powell is not only right, I want his endorsement.
And this is why I said in the beginning of this discussion that I really want everyone who's going to vote to really ask yourself, what is Nigel Farage's plan? Like, do not get distracted by these turquoise parades and these Martin Luther King speeches. Reform is coming, reform is coming. What is the plan? Because like you just exposed, he asked for Enoch Powell's endorsement, but just a couple months ago, he decided to write an article going against Rupert Lowe, saying that Rupert Lowe was wrong for using the term mass migration, because mass migration is a grave and very dangerous term. But you wanted, the backtracking is too much. I can't keep up with it. And I really want to like Nigel Farage. I want to support reform. But as a realist, you know, like who I am as an individual, I feel like Rupert Lowe said, this is your home. Like, don't play around when it comes to politics. Don't just follow the leader and just follow what's trending. Really
well,
ask
it's this
yourself.
idea of remigration is viewed as very controversial. But if you're to take, Sophie Corcoran, the Enoch Powell policy, it was never to force people to leave the country. It was to give them the option to say to certain communities, if you don't want to be here, that's fine. We can help get you back home, or we can help get you to another country that needs your skills. And I think that has been lost in a lot of this, because remigration is now considered to force people to leave the country. Now, that is not what mass deportation is about. Mass deportations are about forcing criminals to leave the country, the 2 million who are here illegally to leave the country. But I don't think it's wrong to necessarily suggest to people, if you're not liking it here, then there might be a better way. There might be a country that suits you better. There might be a country that fits your religion better.
Yeah, and I think Douglas made a really important point actually at the very beginning about Stephen knowing who he was. And there is a real reason actually why, because I'm younger than Based in Bougie actually, but why we all know who Enoch Powell is. And the reason why we all know who Enoch Powell is because mass immigration has ultimately destroyed my generation's future in this country. We have absolutely no hope. We can't get homes. We can't get decent jobs. It has taken Britain away from us, and he was right. And my generation know that he is right. And I went to the pub with my my old school friends last week, and all of them are saying the exact same thing. And we're just normal people that live in Farage and Essex. But one of those
and you're Gen Z, right? You're Gen Z.
Yeah. So one of the funniest thing I find about Douglas Murray, Dan, is that I think we had this conversation a while ago. Is Douglas Murray is probably the only person that will ever get away with saying this, and it does reflect.
He's got a posho voice.
Sorry, this is what I'm saying. It's because he's posh.
Exactly. If Tommy Robinson says it, but Douglas Murray knows that, and it is really fascinating.
If I said it, I'd be cancelled. If Tommy Robinson says it, he'll be cancelled. If anyone else other than Douglas Murray, because he doesn't sound like he's come out of Eton, says it, they'd be cancelled. But why? Why should we be cancelled? Because we're the ones ultimately in working class environments that are paying the biggest price.
Can I just chime in? Yeah, I personally feel like Douglas Murray and Tommy Robinson, they're the same person, just in different fonts. They're just in different fonts.
Yes. Although, in fairness, Douglas Murray has never done that thing, and this is why I love Douglas Murray. He's never done that thing of, oh, Tommy Robinson is a terrible human being, and I'm just going to say that because otherwise I'm scared of being cancelled. He's never done that. And I think what he said about Enoch Powell was right, because, look, I don't agree with certain phrases or certain lines that were used in the Enoch Powell speech. But remember, it was 1968, so it was a very different world. But secondly, it's not the point. We can disagree with certain aspects of someone's language and communication without cancelling them, or in Tommy Robinson's case, without sending them to bloody prison. Look, I did also want to show you one other part of the Douglas Murray interview, though, because I've tracked this story. It's about he appeared on Newsnight, the BBC's Newsnight, and was then attacked by a panel of hardcore lefties who basically said the BBC should not have platformed him in the first place. Douglas Murray's response on GB News is really worth watching.
Well, you must be very happy because the BBC had you on very recently and then proceeded your interview with three panellists.
They succeeded.
They succeeded with three panellists who all said you were crazy, Islamophobic, whatever, including the so-called conservative former special advisor.
Oh, really?
Which is just utterly bizarre.
Right? All they knew is that I gave for the promotion of democracies and death cults. I was in the UK and did a number of large public events and. Was straight into number one on the Sunday Times bestseller list, and I was asked onto Newsnight. And I haven't been on for many years because Newsnight, as I'm sure your viewers will appreciate me saying, moved in my own adult life from must-watch to nobody watches, and it went through a couple of cycles in the meantime of absolutely impossible to watch and unwatchable, and now nobody watches it. I did do a pre-record. They edited it down, as is their right, to about a third of the length, made sure that all of the points I made that were most salient, if I say so myself, were edited out, and then got three unemployed people on to attack me afterwards. I'm not even sure I know exactly who they are. There's somebody who's a Lib Dem and somebody else. But, I mean, it's nice to know that the anti-Douglas Murray industry booms in the UK, and I'm glad that I, at any rate, am helping job creation in my country of birth in helping total ignoramuses get 70 quid or so from the BBC for showing up on a Wednesday evening.
And that is the funny thing, Sophie Corcoran. It's like, that's literally what's happening. It's like, Matthew Stadlin, here's your 70 quid to go on and say Douglas Murray's terrible. Then the Lib Dem former leader, Jo Swinson, who, remember, she said she was going to be Prime Minister, and then she lost her own seat in the election. So she can come on and say Douglas Murray should not be on the BBC. It's a ridiculous game. It's the game the mainstream media plays. Thank God it is a game that will soon be over. Like, soon, I would like to think that no author, Douglas Murray can hold his own, but I'd like to think no author had to go through the ridiculous charade of doing that BBC gauntlet, because it's irrelevant.
I mean, it's hardly a heartbreaking thing having Matthew Stadlin cry about you on the BBC, is it? I mean, he's hardly a record-breaking man. I mean, I've spoke to him a few times, but it's like me. I got blocked by Ben Kentish the other day for talking about young people because him, a middle-aged-ish sort of rich radio presenter can speak about the challenges of my generation far greater than me. They just sew up their own backsides, and all of them are very wealthy, and all of them are very disconnected from what's actually happening. One day it will change, Dan. One day.
Yeah, he's a little weasel, that Ben Kentish guy. Absolutely. Based in Bougie, what did you think? I mean, I guess there's an argument, should Douglas Murray be putting himself through appearing on the BBC, if they're going to treat him that way, if they're going to edit the interview? That's what I found disgusting. Like, they didn't even do that thing where, because I understand, like, when you're dealing with a TV show, there might be time constraints. I get that. Like when I had my show on GB News, every segment sort of had to be 8 minutes long because you've got to go to the ad break and go to the weather. And, oh, thank God I don't have to do that anymore. We can just talk for however long we need to talk on this platform. But what the British Bashing Corporation didn't do is they didn't put up a full unedited version of the interview online. And it's the fact they didn't do that which makes me very suspicious.
Yeah, I'm quite disappointed in Douglas Murray. I thought he was a little bit more intelligent than to go into the BBC. This is the same, media company that completely
I guess he's like, I've got books to sell. I've got a book to sell.
That completely ignored the grooming scandal until Elon Musk decided to, bring it to light. And I just feel like the whole lefty lunatics, like Sophie said, they just up their backside. Like they can't look at it from this situation of mass migration. They can't look at it from just a basic supply and demand perspective. They can't look at it from an economics perspective. They can't look at it from just there's this many people coming into a country that's this small. So they have to always throw out these terms. And like you said, I'm getting tired of it. And I hope we can finally get to a place in mainstream media, hopefully, where we can just stop with the terms, these like offensive terms, these hurty words, and finally get to a place where we can actually have intellectual conversations. So yeah.
Hallelujah. He's out. We're no longer going to have to see another annoying, frustrating, idiotic, weird video of Jeremy Vine in his tight lycra cycling like a madman around London while trying to say that it's the drivers who are the bad guys. He posted on X, small announcement, I'm stopping my cycling videos. The trolling just got too bad. They have had well over 100 million views, but in the end, the anger they generate has genuinely upset me. A regular theme has, sorry, I'm not laughing, has been the desire to see me crushed by a truck. Any cyclist knows this is a very real danger. Well, as I'm constantly saying to Jeremy Vine, I mean, constantly, I say that as if we speak all the time. I used to appear on a show every now and then. I've told him on X. Let me tell you, as a pedestrian walking the streets of London, I'm much more likely to be mowed down by one of your mad cycling mob who think they don't have to follow the road rules and can drive through red lights. And I think we are sick and tired of cyclists believing that they are better than all of us. And I fully support this decision, which looks like it's going to come into place, for cyclists to be able to be charged for dangerous deaths. Because remember, that can happen. So while Jeremy Vine is always talking about the risks for cyclists, what about the risks that cyclists pose to pedestrians? I do have to tell you about, and let's watch it in just a moment actually, his announcement on his Channel 5 show though. Because Basil the Great, setting this up, wrote on X, Jeremy Vine decided to read out some of the comments he gets in response to his cycling videos. It was unintentionally hilarious. And Graham Linehan, the Father Ted writer, posted Partridge moment. Now, come on, we've got to have a laugh sometimes at Jeremy Vine's expense, don't we? Surely he'll take it in good humour. Analysis from Based and Bougie and Sophie Corcoran. After this exceptional, or shall I say, exceptional in a way that they probably didn't expect, piece of broadcasting.
So here we go. It's Jimmy the Fool. Surely this man, that's me, has to be England's biggest A blank, AR blank. It may be terrible, but Obi falls under the wheels of 5 cars that reverse and make sure the job's done. This is just a little cycle bit. Tony Doherty. We are all God's children apart from the devil's offspring, who are bicycle fetishists in the main. A perfect example would be Satan's high priest, an all-round bike fetishist Jeremy Vine. Pongo, most annoying, boring C, maybe I'll say clown, with the most boring effing phone-ins, what a clown you are. It's not the word clown. Please die. Sooner the better. I hope you get banned from the roads permanently, you bike Nazi. We're in here. You're a, look at that. You're without an apostrophe. That's worse than any of it.
I agree.
You really are a complete C. Your day will come. People want me to get run over. That's what's so weird. Jeremy, you are beyond hated. Please only upload another cycling video if it's you getting run down and hospitalised. This one's fair enough. Maybe spend some time with your wife instead of editing and posting whatever it is, SH something, videos on Twitter, then spending all day trying to justify being a blank. I bet your missus is getting banged left, right and centre by a car driver. I mean, so shame he's stopping his videos as we won't get to see him squashed. You really are a colossal bell blank. You really are the lowest form of scum on this planet. I mean, and that's just, there's thousands where they came. And I had to take out the rudest ones. What's happened to us, Michael?
Oh, look, I mean, I'm only laughing because there's something very earnest about Jeremy Vine, and I think a little bit naive, because I'm sure any of the three of us could pull the worst examples of trolling that we have received and that we still receive on a daily basis and put them together and they would look that nasty. But I think if you just focus on the extremities of the trolls, you actually miss the serious point. And the serious point here, Sophie Corcoran, is that for a very, very long time, Jeremy Vine, the cycling fetishist, I quite like that, has decided to try and say that cyclists are all good and all God and drivers are all bad. And anyone who is on the roads knows that that is just not the case. There are as many crazy cyclists as there are crazy drivers.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I don't drive, but I hate cyclists, to be honest. I think they're as bad as vegans. They're just insufferable in every way imaginable. But I love Jeremy Vine. This is the most controversial thing I promise I'll ever say on Outspoken. I won't dare utter something that's controversial ever since. So sorry to our viewers, but I love Jeremy Vine because he just does not take himself seriously at all. And
he does all the TikToks and everything.
And he's just so sweet.
Sophie, that's the thing. I'm with you. Like, I know most viewers of Outspoken cannot stand Jeremy Vine, but on the whole, he's a contrarian who likes to play both sides, and I don't have any issues with the guy. He is a nice man, but based and bougie. At the same time, you can understand that these cyclists who think that they are holier than thou are very, very frustrating when we see their behaviour on the roads of our biggest cities on a daily basis.
Yeah, no, I'm a driver and I can tell you for a fact that cyclists, they act like they own the road. Like the way
yes!
they as if 20 miles per hour isn't annoying enough, and now you have this cyclist just cycling so slow, doesn't want to get out of the way, and the minute you even just zoom past them, they pretend to fall, and they are a headache. However, I actually did enjoy his cycling videos. I just feel like this country has gotten into such a state, and, you know, it's become so serious that sometimes seeing his videos can give us a laugh.
Okay, well shall we have a laugh? Shall we have a laugh then? Because we're going to say RIP to the Jeremy Vine cycling video, and this is what we're missing out on. Watch.
Can I be any closer to the curb? What is going on? Let's look again. Now just see. Is she
to yes. I'm sorry. That's 3 feet or less. That's less than a metre. You've got to be 1.5. And what's amazing here, wow, there is no possible reason for that bus to be so close to me, so scarily close. Just look at how much of the road she has. She doesn't even have to be near me. That was bad. What you've just seen is the reason cyclists go in the middle of the lane. Sorry, should go in the middle of the lane. This is me in Oxford Street. Now, the bus driver thinks he can fit by, and he's pushing to, but I can't allow him. I will be in the middle of the lane for precisely the reason that you saw earlier, where if I go to the left, the bus will pass me too close. So it's safer for me to adopt what is called primary position. But it leaves drivers thinking, what the hell is he doing? In the end, the bus isn't slowed down, by the way, because in London, the cyclist is always faster.
And that's the arrogance, isn't it? In London, the cyclist is always faster. And he might as well have just said in London, the cyclist is always right. But I mean, gosh, a huge amount of effort went into those videos, Sophie Corcoran. I imagine his wife will be very happy, actually, that he's stopping producing those they're like little movie productions. How does he have the time? He's already got 2 jobs.
Yeah, he's so talented. I mean, I wish I could edit like that. Could you imagine how good all of our stuff would be? I mean, GB News could probably borrow him as an editor. I mean, he's a serious
better than anything I've ever produced.
It made me laugh when he tries to start fighting a bus, but it just reminds us, Dan, did you go to primary school here? I don't know, based in Bougie. Did you ever do that cycling proficiency?
Yes,
in
we did.
school?
Yeah.
I love that. That was so good.
It reminds me exactly.
Do you know, I could never cycle. I could never cycle. This is my big revelation. I just have never liked it. And my dad used to have to run after me and I couldn't brake. And sometimes you just know you're not made to do something. So I just haven't cycled. I don't cycle. By the way, speaking of GB News, and only because you raised it, Sophie, only because you raised it, I remember about 3 years ago, I was hosting a show and we fell off air for 45 minutes. And I just hit the roof. I was like, this is insane. Like, how do we not have the technology to just stay on air as a national news station? What happens if we were covering massive breaking news? And I sort of sat in the studio seething and I spoke to all the executives and the board members and like, this is crazy. Yeah, Dan, we've got to sort it out. We're going to sort the technology out. Do you know, last night, I was told, I haven't checked if this is true, but I heard it from a very good source, that GB News was off air for something like 3 hours. Or their shows between 7 o'clock and 10 o'clock just had these huge breaks of like half an hour and they just couldn't broadcast. And I thought, oh my goodness, thank God I'm not there anymore because my heart rate would not be able to cope with that. My stress levels used to get so high when I was dealing with that sort of technology anyway. But based in Bougie, Sophie Corcoran, do stand by because in just 1 minute, you're not going to believe this. You are not going to believe this. J.K. Rowling, who has been on the right side of the issue, of course, when it comes to what a woman is, has decided to race swap one of her characters in the new Harry Potter series, Snape. And surprise, surprise, the race swap actor has now turned on J.K. Rowling. This is quite a story. We're going to analyse it in just 1 minute. But first, you know I never recommend anything unless I truly believe in it. And today I've got something absolutely game-changing for you. Have you ever stopped to think about how crucial comfort is, especially down there? Well, let me tell you, today's Outspoken is proudly sponsored by Sheath Underwear, the revolutionary brand shaking up men's comfort across the globe. And here's what makes it even better. Sheath was founded by a US Army veteran, Robert Patton, while he was serving in Iraq back in 2007. So that's right, this isn't just any underwear brand. This is designed for the toughest conditions imaginable because Patton was battling relentless heat and discomfort in full combat gear, and he thought there has to be a better way, so he created it. And let's be honest, traditional underwear just doesn't cut it anymore. Sheath's innovative dual pouch design ensures your comfort all day long, keeping things separate, cool and fresh. Imagine your essentials being comfortably cradled away from unwanted friction and heat. Trust me, it's genuinely transformative. I personally wear these at the gym, at long days at work, even just relaxing at home, and I'm telling you, once you've experienced Sheath, there is simply no turning back. They are stylish, they are supportive, and they deliver unmatched comfort. I describe it like upgrading from economy to first class, but for your underwear. And right now, the great news is I am offering you an exclusive 20% discount at sheath.com. All you need to do to claim 20% off your entire order, by the way, is use my special promo code OUTSPOKEN at checkout when you go to sheath.com. So what are you waiting for? By the way, Sheath is the perfect present for your husband, your brother, your son, your brother, or hard to buy for best mates. But ladies, don't worry. If you think this is just for the men in your life, you are wrong. There are female versions available too, and you can see some of them being modeled here alongside the UFC boss, because Sheath is the first official underwear of the UFC. So you can click on the link below and head to sheath.com, just enter Outspoken at checkout, and then you can thank me later when you're feeling comfortable, confident, and ready to tackle anything your day throws at you. Sheath underwear, redefining comfort one pair at a time. But now, back to the show. I thought it was bad enough that those snivelling little brats, those awful woke actors who took all of the fame from J.K. Rowling, who became multimillionaires on the back of J.K. Rowling, threw her under the bus because she knows what a woman is. You know who I'm talking about: Daniel Radcliffe, Emma Watson, Rupert Grint. I thought they were bad enough because maybe they thought, well, we don't need J.K. Rowling anymore. We're not going to be in her new TV series. So we have a right to slam her and just get the woke-topians off our back. Not that I thought it was excusable at all, and quite rightly, J.K. Rowling thinks that absolute scumbags. But it gets a whole lot worse, because J.K. Rowling is making a massive new TV version of Harry Potter. Every single book is going to be a TV series in itself. It has a massive budget. It's been made by HBO. Trust me, this is going to be the TV series of the decade. And of course, who the actors were, the new actors were for these iconic roles, was going to be very interesting, especially given there remains this group of woke-topians in Hollywood who have decided that J.K. Rowling is the devil, is a woman who needs to be destroyed because she has simply stood up for the rights of biological women. And then quite recently, a controversial decision was made to race swap one of the characters in the book, Snape, to turn him from what was a very obvious Alan Rickman character. He absolutely fit all of the characteristics that were explained in the book to this new, younger black star. But okay, we went along with it to an extent, you know, in J.K. Rowling we trust. But wow, that was a big mistake, because look at what's just happened. The star of J.K. Rowling's new anti-woke HBO Harry Potter show turns on her in a pro-trans open letter signed by A-listers who have starred in her movies. So let me take you through just the start of the Daily Mail story. The star of HBO's Harry Potter reboot has turned on J.K. Rowling in a letter standing, quote, in solidarity with members of the LGBT plus community, I don't even know what that means, impacted by the Supreme Court gender ruling. Papa Acedo, who has been cast as Severus Snape in the upcoming series, was one of several signatories of the letter addressed to film and TV industry bodies, encouraging them to support the trans community. The letter, signed by more than 400 industry professionals, including other actors from the franchise, claimed the ruling earlier this month undermines the lived reality and threatens the safety of trans, non-binary and intersex people living in the UK. Kelly J. Keane, the women's rights advocate, responded saying, nothing worse than a bunch of wankers getting together to sign a letter about you. You have to be a special sort of weak cretin to put your name to these sorts of things, don't you think? But based in Bougie, one of these weak cretins is meant to be starring in the new Harry Potter. Papa Acedo. So what on earth is J.K. Rowling going to do about this?
You know what? It's such a shame because Papai Sudi, he's actually an amazing, amazing actor.
Oh,
And I
is
think
he? Okay, tell me about that because I'd never heard of him. So what's he been in? Why? I'd literally never heard of him. So
he's been on the show. I completely forgot what it's called, but I forgot the name. I forgot. But there's this Netflix show that talks about basically mainstream media manipulation through AI, and he played the character fantastic. Everyone should watch the show. When I find the name, I'll put it on my Instagram story.
I'll have a...
And he played, yeah, and he basically played a prime minister, and he played it fantastically. So I think Severus Snape playing that character, that would have fit him perfectly, regardless of his skin tone, because he is a great character. However, to turn on J.K. Rowling all because of the trans community. I don't know if you guys seen that recent clip of Justin Bieber where he's going to the paparazzi, money, 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 money. That's all people care about, money, money, money. Like, this is Hollywood. All they care about is money. The fact that you can turn on someone for simply stating biological facts that has been around since Adam and Eve is just mind-blowing to me. And it also just goes to show the entitlement of these lefties, these entitlement where it's like you're given an opportunity, and as soon as you're given it, you're literally biting the hand that feeds you. And plus, he's an upcoming actor too. This would have been an amazing opportunity for him, but he decided to decline it and decided to sign this dumb letter, all because of this trans community.
But the most shocking thing is, actually, a couple of things to say. Firstly, the two series I've just looked are Black Mirror and Black Doves. Now, I've seen Black Doves, actually. I remember him in that, and he was good. So I agree with you. He's a good actor. The most shocking thing, though, Sophie Corcoran, is that he's not saying that he's not going to take on the role. He still expects to be taking J.K. Rowling's coin while slamming her. Now, personally, I would like to see J.K. Rowling say, no, you just piss off. Not for free speech reasons, by the way. He can think whatever he wants. But isn't this about respect? If you're signing up for Harry Potter, you are signing up to work for J.K. Rowling, and actually you should just be publicly respectful for her and shut up. Just shut up. Just shut up and act. We do not need to hear from you. We especially don't need to hear from you, by the way, as a man, about why this issue matters, because it's people like you, Sophie, who are actually impacted by it, not him. He will never be impacted by the trans extremism that has put women at risk.
Right. And I say this, if you don't like J.K. Rowling, if you think she's dangerous for the UK, if you think she's evil, don't act in the film. Don't take the money. Piss off and go work for Disney. I don't care. Don't sit there and sign letters because you're not achieving anything. Just don't act in it. If you feel so strongly about this issue that you feel like you need to condemn this woman who is ultimately going to make a career, don't do it. No one's forcing him to act in this film. In actual fact, he's getting a lot of benefit from doing so. Don't do it. If you're a man of your word, don't do it. Because if I was in the same way and they wanted me to act in some woke film, I wouldn't do it.
Exactly. No one is forcing you to take the money. I would never take money from the British Bashing Corporation, for example. I would never take money from Channel 4 News, for example, or Sly News. You have a choice, Papa Assidu. And I think the fact that you want to have your cake and eat it too, and I think it's really telling as well, based in Bougie, he's only done this once his casting has been announced. And I think that's really critical too, because it puts J.K. Rowling in a very, very awkward position.
Yeah. Sorry, I just researched the show. The show is called The Capture, by the way. It's
The
called
Capture. Oh, God, so he's been in loads of Netflix stuff then. Okay.
Dan, you would love the show. It's right up your alley. It does talk about mainstream media manipulation. But yeah,
okay, good.
I don't like that whole, Hollywood space. I feel like they're all entitled. They're all bratty. They all just want their cake and be able to eat it too. Like for example, I don't like the LGBT community. I will never accept money from them. I just won't do it. But for him to accept money from J.K. Rowling once his character is finally, written in stone, but at the same time is bashing the person. Like, when are these people going to understand that without J.K. Rowling, you would have no show? You would have no money. And I just do not like the entitlement and the brattiness of these actors. They drive me insane.
I know, Sophie Corcoran, it is such a frustrating thing. And I just wish these actors would have a look at what happened to Rachel Ziegler and Snow White. Because let me tell you, we do not want to be preached to by little actors who live in their weird little world and do all of their odd things, you know, and vegan and sleep with lots of different people and say they, them and non-binary. You know, that's all fine. That is all fine. You go and do that, but just don't preach to us, because you destroyed Snow White, but in the process, you lost Disney something like $500 million. And the problem is, HBO has to be really careful here, because remember, the Woketopians are already trying to promote a boycott of Harry Potter. So this new Harry Potter series. So then if there's an actor here who's trying to come in from the other way, they risk actually the conservatives saying, well, no, we're not keen on this series. And remember, there was already a lot of concern about the fact that this character was being race swapped, and that's before you get to him trying to speak out against J.K. Rowling.
Yeah, I think if I was JK and I was making the intelligent decision, I would cut my losses with a lot of these people. If there's anyone involved in the production staff that signed this letter, or as you say, as part of the cast, you'd have to bin them off, because otherwise they're going to turn this whole thing into a circus. They're going to take the show away from home for what it's meant to be. They're going to politicize it. And like you said, it's going to end up like Snow White. But there is a big win today, because J.K. Rowling always wins. She never loses. And that finally the FA, the English FA, have also banned trans people from women's football. So she's just winning every day. You know, these people think that they're taking the W's because they sign a letter. There is nobody that has won more in the last year or so than J.K. Rowling. I don't think she's ever lost. I mean, she's the complete opposite of that Jolyon Good Law Project guy, who I don't think has ever won in his life. But yeah, she keeps winning. But I think the best thing for her to do, there is a silent majority out there. The vegans or whatever, or the cyclists, they're all going to boycott her show. But there's a silent majority out there of people that will support it, so long as she doesn't allow it to happen, to go down the route that Snow White did. Because, I mean, that bombed, didn't it?
Speaking of Netflix shows, can we just talk about the total difference in reaction from the political class in the United Kingdom, from Slippery Starmer, the British Prime Minister, when it came to the Netflix drama, not documentary Starmer, it is a drama, which was quite clearly propagating an anti-white narrative because it changed the main character, which was a teenage killer that had initially been based on a black 15-year-old knife-wielding stabber in Croydon, East London, Southeast London, changed that character into a young white lad from Liverpool. Now, I actually thought the drama was great, but it's not the point. It became an absolute political punching bag, and Starmer kept calling it a documentary, and he got the makers into Number 10 Downing Street, and on and on and on it went. But last night, on Channel 4, there was an actual documentary, not a drama, a documentary about the biggest scandal in British history, Groomed, all about the Pakistani rape gang scandal. And there's been radio silence from Keir Starmer on this issue. And actually, that hypocrisy has been pointed out by a lot of people today. Dominic Cummings, the former Downing Street advisor under Boris Johnson, talking to the lobby. Now, the lobby, for people who don't know, is those Westminster journalists who all seem to hunt in a pack and do whatever the establishment is telling them to do. So he said, hey, lobby, first cue this AM to PMOS. That's like when the Prime Minister, well, it's the Prime Minister's official spokesperson. So it's when the journalists ask the PM spokesperson, did the PM watch the Rape Gangs documentary last night? Oh, really? How come suddenly the PM isn't the nation's chief documentary critic? Is it because he's Whitehall's NPC PM, whose job here is to continue the local and national coverage while accelerating importing of more rapers from the exact same tribal areas and their cousins? And GB Politics reported that Keir Starmer rejected an interview request to appear on the Channel 4 documentary. Suella Braverman, the former Home Secretary, did the Prime Minister watch this documentary last night, and will he hold a summit in Downing Street with its makers, and will it be shown across all schools? Let me see. Inevitable West. Thousands of Brits are in tears tonight. Channel 4 just smashed through the establishment lies and told the world what really happened. This is massive. Chris Rose, Channel 4 aired Groomed, a national scandal, hard-hitting truth, and I would not blame you if it brought you to tears. Perhaps this should be shown in every school across the UK, since it's far more of a priority and based on reality. And our very own Sophie Corcoran, I wonder if we will see the PM push for the grooming show shown tonight on Channel 4 like he did Adolescence. Adolescence is a fake drama. Groomed is real. Let's show that in schools instead. Has he watched it? And Sophie, I know that it's great that there are people like you who are receiving a lot of traction for this online and other big names backing the same point of view like Dominic Cummings and Suella Braverman. But the point is, we know that this documentary will not dominate the agenda because the mainstream media and the establishment for so long, have done everything possible to cover up the rape gang scandal, and it makes me sick.
Yeah, and I think there was a news report come out now that essentially, I think Tracy Brabin, who is, I believe she's the mayor of where sort of Batley and Spen is, that area. And obviously she was the former MP for Batley and Spen, took over after Jo Cox, I believe. And she has essentially rejected a motion into any sort of grooming gangs there. So even the government's own inquiries, inquiries that they promised that they would do, if the local area wants to reject them, then they're saying, oh, well, the local authority doesn't want it, so we're not going to do it. We're putting an inquiry into the local authority because they failed. They're essentially letting them mark their own homework and saying, of course the local authorities don't want these inquiries because they're responsible. Of course some of these Labour MPs don't want these inquiries because they're involved. Obviously, the point of an inquiry is to stop these people getting away from it. So the government's rules around this are far too loose. But again, it's just a great hypocrisy. You can't shove adolescents down my throat and come and say that all boys are toxic, which, as I said, is an extremely dangerous message to portray and not true. And say that, you know, we should be showing this in schools and that we should push this message that all white boys are toxic in the UK and dangerous. But all of a sudden, when we've got a real documentary shown by Channel 4, no less, can we just emphasise the importance that Channel 4 have shown this?
They usually only do woke
The Prime Minister wants
content.
nothing to do with it. This is becoming so mainstream. You can't ignore it anymore as much as the Prime Minister is trying to do. And the walls are closing in on Labour. And they're doing the best as they can to run from it. The local authorities are doing the best they can to run from it. But they can't run from it for much longer. And they're trying to put adolescents... And I reckon this is why. They knew this documentary was coming, by the way, because they would have asked him for an interview quite far in advance. So that's probably the reason why he's gone so gung-ho on adolescence, because he's probably known that this documentary is actually coming out for quite some time. So he's trying to shift the focus onto this made-up fake drama that tries to push the narrative that he wants to show, that all white men are bad, instead of showing actually what type of bad men there are out there. And it's not young white boys in secondary schools, I can tell you that.
No, indeed. And Based in Bougie, I watched it last night. It is a hard watch. It's certainly not an enjoyable piece of television. I know for a lot of people that will be really difficult. What struck me is that I had quite recently been on the Mark Steyn cruise, and one of the fellow guests on the Mark Steyn cruise was Sammy Woodhouse, the rape gang survivor. And it was great to get to know Sammy, actually, and we just spoke a lot, and she's so open about her experiences. And her story of being groomed by these rape gangs matched up so much to what these brave young women were saying on the documentary. And that really struck me too. It's like, oh my God, this has happened to so many young women.
Emphasis on the word so many. And that's why Keir Starmer, he has an obligation to talk about this. And this is why I refer to the Labour Party as the loser party, because they get everything wrong. Like, they haven't done anything right. And the whole adolescence documentary, like, can someone help me understand what was the purpose of it? Like, what was the purpose? Why did we need to know this fake story? Do you understand? Like, you can't sit here and say that we need to protect men and we need to protect men from danger whilst also creating a documentary insinuating that all men are toxic and men who, you know, have a little bit of rage are these demonic people, and white men, to be specific, are these demonic people that we need to run away from. It makes absolutely no sense. However, the grooming documentary, this is real life. This has happened to probably millions of girls, you know, because I know they are trying to hide the statistics. But the reason why they do not want to talk about this is because if they know that if the public does further investigation, the way Tommy Robinson did and the way Urban Scoop did, they will realize that a lot of these politicians were in cahoots with these grooming gangs, and that's what they're trying to hide. And that's why Labour will never, emphasis on the word never, have my support.
Very good point. Okay, thank you both, Based and Bougie and Sophie Corcoran. Sophie, I know you're a great election watcher. Are you going to be doing an all-nighter?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I'll be texting you throughout every single exit poll that comes out. We are absolutely praying for not a Conservative win in Cambridgeshire and Peterborough. That's the only thing I care about, but I reckon that will unfortunately happen because they're quite far ahead in the opinion polls. But I'm so excited tonight. I'm such a nerd, so I'm really looking forward to see what's going to happen.
And Sophie, just before you go, and actually I should remind everyone to sign up to my Substack, www.outspoken.live, because you wrote a brilliant column earlier in the week on Outspoken about something you are incredibly passionate about and angry about, and you have now just launched a petition on this too. And this is about wanting to stop the use of private rental accommodation for housing asylum seekers.
Yep, so the government came out earlier this week and encouraged landlords to house asylum seekers. So they're paying landlords 5 years worth of rent, plus all damages and everything, to house asylum seekers. Obviously, we have a rental crisis that is pushing young people out of this country. 4 in 10 young people are spending over 30% of their salaries in rent. It is utterly a complete and utter betrayal of my generation for this government to allow asylum seekers into housing. This is their way of getting these asylum seekers out of hotels and saying, oh, look, we're getting them out of hotels, good for us, but we're going to take all those houses that are supposed to be going for young people so that we can start our future away from us and give them to asylum seekers. Of course, a lot of landlords will take it up because it's guaranteed rent that they perhaps might not have, and they, of course, get all of the fixing for free, and they're going to make more from it. So it's just young people pushed out. This is an existential crisis for young people's future in this country. I cannot emphasise how big this betrayal is, and I really need everyone's support to help us stop this. I've written a letter to Angela Rayner earlier this week. I think it's gotten about 11,000, 12,000 likes so far. I'm going to keep pushing, but I want the government to not spend any of their money in paying landlords to rent asylum seekers at the expense of my generation.
No, it's such an important point. Your column for the Outspoken Substack was absolutely brilliant. It explains the whole thing. I really recommend people sign up to read it. You can do so completely for free at www.outspoken.live. Thank you so much, Sophie Corcoran. And Based and Bougie, we will see you again very soon. Now, I've got to pick up on something that Debbie Burgess said on the live chat. She said, when I was talking about tomorrow's special show, which is with the superstar panel, of course, for the election, Alex Phillips, Howard Cox, Father Calvin Robinson, and Connor Tomlinson. Debbie Burgess wrote, I love you, Debbie, by the way. But she said, great, all anti-Nigel guests tomorrow, laughing face emoji, laughing face emoji. Well, Debbie, I have to say, Alex Phillips is about the furthest from an anti-Nigel guest you can possibly have. In fact, loads of you get annoyed because you think Alex Phillips is too pro-Nigel. I would say that Connor Tomlinson is right in the middle. He's very analytical. He's like me. He views himself as a critical friend of Reform UK. Father Calvin Robinson, absolutely. He's on the other side. And when it comes to Howard Cox, actually, it's much more nuanced because I think he feels like Reform UK walked away from him and he's devastated about it. And that was because he supported Tommy Robinson. So I actually think it's going to be a fascinating panel that has a broad cross-section of views on the right. Enrique Shelton, and this is on the whole idea of should we be voting for Reform UK today. Katie Hopkins says, hold your nose. And he says, colleagues, I understand these disagreements, but now is the time to remain united. Vote for reform. And Mary on the Grooming Gangs documentary says Starmer should now say groomed must be shown in every school. And I should say, please do subscribe and turn on your notification bell because that way you will be alerted to our special election broadcast tomorrow. We're going to be kicking off at the usual time, 5 p.m. UK, midday Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific. That is when we will know the bulk of the results. But if you follow me on Substack, www.outspoken.live, I am going to be doing a live chat there as well. as the results start to come in. Okay, Greatest Britain Union Jackass time now. Your nominees today for Union Jackass. Ross Kemp, nominated by Karen Hankey, and it's for the cringe video with Slippery Starmer campaigning for local elections and advising the PM on what working class people think. He's Noam Middleton. Anas Sawar, nominated by Darren Donaldson, the Scottish Labour leader for blatant sectarianism and being anti-white. And Max Wilkinson, the Liberal Democrat MP, for his awful heckling of Nigel in Parliament yesterday, Nigel Farage, that is, maybe you can pay for it then, you stupid bleep. And it was a close one today. In third position, the Lib Dem MP Max Wilkinson, the runner-up, Ross Kemp, for the Labour campaign Loven. But your Union Jackass today with 38% of the vote, Anas Sawar, the Scottish Labour leader, for his anti-assimilation push. And the exciting thing is now that they go head-to-head with your other Union Jackass winners from the week. Now, let me just remind myself. I know it was Ed Davey on Monday, Meghan Markle on Tuesday, Ed Miliband on Wednesday, and Anas Sawar on Thursday. So straight after the show, I'm going to put those 4 Union Jackass winners head-to-head in the post section of YouTube. Get voting. I will announce the worst Britain in the world tomorrow night. Greatest Britain, though, it could only be the victims of the Pakistani rape gangs who appeared in the Channel 4 documentary Groomed. Oh my goodness, you were inspirational, so brave. Thank you for sharing your stories, and thank you for Big Mama Booth for that nomination. Now, we're moving on to Substack now for the uncancelled after show, www.outspoken.live. Please sign up for a monthly membership to watch the uncancelled after show first every night, and you can watch us either live or on demand. Tonight, Prince William finally snaps. I'll reveal his bombshell vow to punish Meghan Markle for using her HRH title with royal YouTube sensation Diner. So for now, we come off YouTube and Rumble. We move to Substack, www.outspoken.live. But we are back with our election special tomorrow, 5 p.m. UK time, midday Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific. Hit subscribe. If you're watching on YouTube or Rumble, remember, turn on the notification bell. Then you will be alerted as we go live. And most importantly, I promise to keep fighting for you.